Journeys is your go-to podcast for all things creativity. I'm your co-host, Dave Petrosky, chair of the Communication, Media, and Screen Studies Department.
And I am your co-host, Melanie, Venezuelan designer and educator. This is the podcast about creativity, what it is in its many forms, and how we can become more creative in our everyday lives.
Okay, welcome to Creative Journeys. We're back after a brief hiatus. The holidays came, we went on winter break, and we kind of dropped the ball on doing some sort of a inter semester kind of commentary or something like that. So we're going to try to get us caught up and moving back into the podcast over the next couple of episodes. Hi, Melanie. How are you?
Hi, David. I wouldn't say that we dropped the ball.
Well,
we just needed a little bit of a break.
Yeah, we did need it. We needed a break. And we're trying to figure out different ways of approaching the podcast because, the name of our podcast is Creative Journeys. Mm-hmm. So, we've been talking to folks about their creative journeys, and we'll continue to do that, of course. But one of the things that we have been thinking about or trying to figure out is like, how else can we be creative with the podcast? What else can we do? Are there particular ideas or issues about creativity that folks want to talk about? We come at this from, a variety of different ways that we've talked about on previous episodes. My sort of emphasis has been more on education than almost anything else. Melanie, you bring much more professional background into the conversation, of course. But also, your wealth of background with education as well. So, what I would like to do is just invite our listeners. We do have some listeners, which is great, and they're from all over the world, which is very exciting. So, welcome to everyone from that's been listening to the podcast. But what we'd like to do is kind of open things up a little bit and invite listeners to give us suggestions for what we can talk about in the podcast. So our email is creativejpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll bring that up at the end of the episode again. But what we're really looking for is just sort of ideas, inspiration, things that you would like to listen to. We can talk about just about anything, as you probably figured out at this point.
As we figure out the directory of the podcast and how we want to move forward, we want to do this in a collaborative way and invite everyone to give us ideas and suggestions. It is our first year. We're only a few episodes in. And we plan this to be a long-term relationship with everyone. So as we figure out what the next steps are going to be, as we invite more guests, we step out of the area of Southern Connecticut State University, we go live, and we go out with video. We want to see what everyone is interested about.
Yeah. And that's probably something that we should probably mention. We're starting to record video at this point in our studio. We've had the capability of doing this for a while, but
we've been doing it.
We're just practicing before with the video. And we've got our great producer, Jay Forsyth, is in the control booth. So, hey, Jay.
Hello.
Thanks for steering the ship for us and kind of keeping us on track.
Of course.
We couldn't do it without you.
That's for sure.
It's definitely a team effort. This does take a team to move the mountain. So
Yeah. And as we move forward, we're going to try to pull Jay into some of our conversations too,
Yes.
because Jay is a great teacher and a very creative person. He runs the studio here at Southern Connecticut State, and he's just got a wealth of experience and ideas and perspective that I think really enriches the conversations. And almost every time that we have a podcast, we're winding up talking even after the microphones go off, and we talk with Jay for like a half an hour or more whenever we have time.
Yeah, we really have to force ourselves out of here.
Yeah.
And remind ourselves that we have other commitments.
Yeah, it's very true.
I appreciate the kind words. It is very humbling to hear that, because it's not, you talked earlier off air, right, about the imposter syndrome and things like that. And it is a real thing, something that you don't really think about until you're in that situation and you think back and reflect on, if what you said made sense to, we'll say, a class of 25 or even, a one-on-one conversation.
I go through it every day.
Yeah. It's
all the time. And, there's just, even when we're hitting those sort of moments when there's some sort of uncertainty in the classroom, it throws you. And then all of a sudden you start questioning almost everything that you do after that point.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's probably true for anybody that has like routines and those kinds of things, and they break the routine. It kind of throws your flow.
It does, and having difficult conversations too in the classroom with the students. I know that our conversations here always inspire me to bring new topics into the classrooms or in other areas where other conversations happen. But touching on, throwing everything off for a little bit and trying to get back on track. Just last week, I started one of my classes talking about how heavy our hearts are with everything that's going on right now in the country, and making sure that my students were okay and that they could feel that they're in a safe space and that I am a safe person to be around. And then how do you go into class mode? After having that conversation, how do you spend maybe 20, 30 minutes of having those serious discussions and then, okay, well, now we need to talk about UX and UI.
Right.
There is no right way to transition from, kind of the realities of life into, this world that we have built here at Southern or in education in general. I call it the educational bubble. And it's always a difficult conversation to have, even with a student who is, managing something outside of this bubble. And it's almost as if they feel guilty even asking us, for permission to not come to class or to submit an assignment late, so to say. And, I have to constantly remind myself, as well as the students, like, life exists outside of here.
Yes.
And there's going to be moments in time where you have to switch and shift your focus to something that is far more important than what we're doing in here, because, in the grand scheme of life, and I'm not trying to undermine, the work that we're doing here and preparing students to kind of, in that transition, period from, being in college to going out into the workforce or whatever it is they're doing. But I think it's key to remind them, like, this is such a small part of the grand scheme of life. Mm-hmm. And, there are going to be those moments where it's okay to attend to what exists outside of this bubble.
Well, and I think it's sort of our obligation. Well, it's not sort of our obligation. It is our obligation, right? Mm-hmm. We're and I think that that's something that, I take very seriously. I know that you do as well. Both of you do. But we're trying to care for the people that are coming to learn from us. And learning only happens when people are in a good headspace.
Yeah.
And we have to talk through these issues, right? It's really hard for you to get through a difficult concept or something that's very complex and learn about things when you're completely distracted by the things that are going on in your life. So sometimes you just need the opportunity to vent a little and talk a little bit about the things that are bothering you or hitting on the issues that are weighing down your attention. And that, I think, is super important because if we are uncomfortable, if we are in a space where we feel like we're being questioned or challenged constantly, then we're not able to do the things that we need to do, which, for us is to teach and for our students is to learn. So, I think that's a really important part of student life and the evolution that we have. And I think that we've talked about this before, that, when a student comes to the university, and I would say that this is, any university, but I mean, I think we're very self-reflexive about this. We think about it a lot because it is part of our mission, is like, how do we help them to become the person that they're trying to become?
Yes.
And that's not just about learning facts or learning a very specific career-based skill. It's also like, how are you processing all of this? How are you dealing with these transitions? And some of our students have very difficult backgrounds. We have some students that are working multiple jobs. We have some students that are, full-time caregivers for their families. And that places a lot of pressure on them to perform and do these kinds of things. And, it becomes very visible when we're trying to do creative work.
Yes, and that brings me back to one of our episodes when we were focusing more about talking about the fear with colleagues,
yes,
and in our creative activities, and how that hinders a little bit our creativity in our distinct fields. But taking this into the students' equation, right?
Yeah.
How fear also is going to bring down their focus and their creativity and their engagement in the classrooms or with others. And it's that fear of, I can't share what's going on at home because my professors are not going to understand me. They're not going to be sympathetic, or I'm afraid of what's happening because I have DACA status and I don't know how things are going to go. Students that had to withdraw from the semester immediately at the beginning of classes because of everything that's going on, because their parents don't feel safe about them coming to campus. So it's important that we acknowledge that fear and that we let them know that it is an open space and that we are here for them.
Sure.
And try to open up those spaces in the classroom and making those relationships with the students so they feel like we are a safe space, and try to have them open up and relax, because the classroom is that space too, where we can maybe let go of our worries for an hour, 2 hours, and do something fun, do a creative activity, interview people.
Sure. Yeah.
Do some drawings.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a big part of it. I mean, we're, we have to figure out ways to, sort of bridge that, well, I mean, it's not even a gap. It's just it's more of a mountain that we're trying to climb, which is, here's my personal life. And I have to make sense of what this personal life is, and how do I navigate this? How can I find the path forward where I can learn something and actually engage at a level that I hope to, and be comfortable about it. And, we had talked about this in one of our episodes. I can't remember which one, but, just the difficulty of students taking creative risks. And for everyone, I mean, I think that this is true. Taking a creative risk puts yourself out there, and you're trying something new or different, or you're trying a different approach. And that has costs, and how do you do work with that? And if you're feeling pressure and feeling a lot of negativity in your regular life, you're going to be less likely to take those creative risks. So we do have an obligation to kind of put the students at ease, and I mean, not necessarily just forget about their problems. We want them to engage with their problems, but we also want them to be able to put them into proper perspective with what they're trying to do here.
Yes.
And that's often a challenge for us. I know I deal with that all the time. We have like different little things that come into play. Like, a student, I put a lot of care and thought into the first couple of classes of the semester to kind of set the stage so that we have this sort of safe space. But it's very there's a lot of talk and massaging that I do during those first couple of classes. And then I have a student that adds the class late and misses all of that. And then suddenly they're put in a position where they have to flip the switch and start to perform without having the benefit of that kind of pep talk and grounding that I've tried to lay for the rest of the class. And it's been, that's always a challenge. That's always a challenge.
Yeah, I would say that a challenge too, for me, comes in the advising side of things.
Yeah.
And maybe when we get transfer students or freshman students who unfortunately didn't have the best path starting at the university, or maybe they had a few different advisors or changed major a couple times, and making sure their experience with me is very different, and it becomes a positive experience, and understanding and reading the room to see like, okay, the problem that is going on doesn't have to do with me because I was not part of the equation before, but I have to handle it now. So I'm getting some of that grievance and getting some of the frustrations coming from the students.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it becomes challenging, and how to just get the students comfortable with a new person, and try to get them comfortable with different classes if you're not part of those classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of complications too with advising, and just misunderstandings and those kinds of things. I mean, always at midterm it becomes difficult because the students see their midterm grades, and usually that's just a warning that says, hey, think about this class. You're not doing so great. So, pull things out, talk to your professor. And it's not necessarily meant to be like this sort of really negative thing, but the students quite frequently act like the class is over. Like, I've got an F in this class or whatever, and it's like,
I like to remind the students too, particularly my students, because midterm, it's never a midway point.
Right.
Midterm is actually about 25% of the class. So I always have to remind them, yes, it's looking good right now, but you still need to keep it up for the rest of the semester, or it's not looking good, but we can do all of these things to keep it up.
Yeah.
And just be like, do not worry until I tell you to worry.
Yeah, because that's exactly the issue that I have with my classes at this point, because I do use a gameful approach to the class. So basically what that constitutes is students starting at 0 points and building up towards the end of the semester. And what we kind of do is try to achieve particular grade levels by earning a specific number of points, right? Which seems very similar to what we would do in a regular classroom. But if you think about it in terms of like how we're traditionally doing it, it's more often, the students are, kind of given the directive that they start the class with an A, and they have to, it's their job to keep the A, and then every time that they do something wrong, we deduct points, right? So in the the way that I'm doing it is it kind of builds. So everything that they do adds points on. But the problem with that is that at the midterm, we can't use that end point as the gauge, because we haven't even gotten to a place where we have that many points, right? So trying to, explain to the students that that's the case, and we're just using this as a marker, and I'm doing it based on performance in the class, like who has the highest point value. Well, that let's use that as the A point. And it kind of makes the midterm a little bit more curvy than it probably is designed to be. But it's one of the easiest ways for me to explain it to the students, and easiest ways for them to kind of process this idea that they're in, the grading is in transition or something like that.
I would love to learn more about this gamified version of grading. Definitely not right now.
Sure.
But we'll have to talk about this because I find it very interesting. I'm going through this mode where everything that is gamified attracts me. And I find it way more engaging and way more interesting, to the point that we went to a sushi place around New Year's in New Haven. I don't remember the name of it. I will have to look it up. But it's one of those like conveyor belts, carousel sushi places.
Yeah.
So they're set up. So there's a little toy machine on top. And it's just the typical 25 cent, 50 cent that you see in supermarkets, that you put the coins and something comes out. So every 8 plates that you eat, you get a little toy. Or a little something. And I just find it so interesting how, as a grown adult, I still find this super fun. And they're getting me to eat more and spend more money, because I'm going to get a little toy that is probably worth 50 cents or not even $1. But it's that excitement that I am getting something out of it.
I want to find out about this place because it sounds like so much fun.
I have it saved on my phone, so I will tell you the name. And it's right around the corner from us. But now I see everything through this lens of like, how can we gamify this experience to make it more enjoyable and more engaging to the younger generations. Because they did grow up with this like instant gratification of the online world, which I don't think is always great. But when you get that engagement that makes them want to go for more, learn more, try something more. I think is where we are doing good with the gamification of things.
And I think that that's sort of why I talk about it as gameful. And that I'm borrowing that term. It comes from McGonagall, and she wrote the book Reality is Broken. But she was basically saying how important games are for us, right? And that particular point of view is basically saying, well, gamification is a loaded term because it's got that, it's got this sort of corporatization that's kind of implied, right? That we're going to get like you're going to get coupons if you spend a certain amount of money or whatever. I got sucked in over the holidays. I tripped over Temu for some reason and got Temu like completely gamifies everything.
My mom is obsessed with it.
And it's crazy because they send you these texts. I get bombarded by texts constantly. And it'll say, oh, you got your name in a drawing and do this, and you have
the little wheel.
It's got the wheel and it spins, and it always comes out at the highest possible prize, right? And if you look at the fine print, it basically says, well, everybody always gets the highest possible prize, right? But it kind of gets you into this this mode where you're kind of thinking about, but that kind of what they're trying to do is suck you in and say, okay, I want to pull you in and get you to buy more, I mean, technically, I suppose that's what we would do in the classroom. We want you to learn more. And that's true. But the gamefulness is basically, kind of taking game ideas and making the learning more playful, right? So that's the fullness, right? So it's games, but then the playfulness, right? And it's more than just mechanizing things and saying, okay, if you do this many things, you're going to get a bonus or something like that. That is a feature that you can use, and it works. But at the same time, it also comes with this idea of making things much more pleasant for people and more exploratory. So it gets back to that whole issue of like, how do we create a space? And I think that that's what gamification does, is it creates this space where you're excited about things.
Yes.
And it's tapping into our emotions and our motivations and the things that we enjoy, and tries to make that part of the experience. And I think that that's a really cool thing. So at some point we'll talk more about that.
Yes.
I did want to just take a moment, because we're gonna we both have to cut our discussion a little bit short today because of timing. But I did want to just give us an opportunity to kind of do a recap maybe of our first few episodes. And actually, we had more than
we had a total of 7 episodes.
That's right.
Counting our first 2 episodes where we give an introduction of who we are and what the podcast is going to be about. And then we have 5 wonderful guests. I think it will be great to sort of like do a little bit of a recap. And then we're going to have some amazing guests coming up in the next couple of episodes as well.
That's right.
So that will be part of our structure. We'll have guests over. There'll be some episodes when it's just the 2 of us. And we are starting to discuss stepping out of the studio.
That's right.
And, having some experiences in different environments. So I'm excited about that. And also having students come over and work with us in some episodes and participate in some episodes to make them a little bit more engaging, and create some activities in here as well.
Yeah. I'm very excited about doing that. And just being able to open things up. And this might be a good opportunity while we're talking about like the future, just to remind everybody, if you missed it at the beginning of the episode, open call for suggestions for ideas, topics, things you'd like us to kind of figure out or talk about. Please email us at creativejpodcast@gmail.com. So let's just do like a quick highlights. Like, what are some of the things that kind of stood out for you?
Perfect. So I can start with episode 1. So in episode 1, we had Nicole Henderson as a guest. And that's what I was touching right before we started recording. A lot of the conversation revolved about fear and imposter syndrome, and how us as educators and creatives, we sometimes get stuck in our own creative ways because we're in this academia world where everybody has PhDs. And we feel like, okay, everybody's a little bit smarter than I am, or they have more experience than we do. I know I feel it with my own colleagues where they're doing amazing work. There's amazing paintings. And I'm trying to put work in gallery, but I don't feel like I'm at their level. And sometimes I have to remind myself, yes, we are all at the same level, and we all have skills in our own different ways.
Yeah.
So that was a great episode to me, just to remind ourselves, like, we need to get out of our heads a little bit.
Yeah. And I could talk to Nicole for hours. But she's been a great inspiration to me in a lot of different ways. And I think that's one of the things that pops up a lot in our discussions. Like folks, we've even had a couple of guests that say, well, I don't know what I'm going to talk about.
Yes.
Like I'm not that special. And then they come on and they're absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
right?
all of our guests have been amazing.
I think in episode 2, we talked with Braxton, and he was talking about different ways that he's making math more accessible to students. And I love the fact that he's working with puzzles and games. That fits very much into what we've been talking about.
Our likes as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of his episode, I really enjoyed when we talked about that sort of like puzzle scavenger hunt that he does with high school students. And like that would have been so exciting for me to do as a student.
Oh, I would have loved that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. And I'm actually looking forward to maybe meeting some of the other people in the math department and talk about the tensillations and the origami work that they do.
Yeah.
Because I can't help but my eyes just wander every time I pass through the hallway and I see different structures, and I'm a paper lover, so I just want to be making little puzzles and things with my hands. So that's something that I look forward for in the future.
Yeah, I think it's become more and more interesting to me that how much math keeps coming back into my life in different ways, because my son just finished his master's degree in physics.
Oh wow!
But he's
I don't know that we have talked about that before.
No. Oh no! He defended last semester, which was really great here on campus too, which was awesome. But just talking with him about the math and how math is so integrally linked into the study that he's doing, and he's like eager to learn more about advanced math, and I was like, this is the guy that complained about algebra in high school, that's that kind of stuff.
It is a little daunting to me. So in my doctoral journey of learning about quants and statistics, it makes me question everything and wonder about everything. So hopefully I do get to the point where I find it fascinating. So if we look at episode 3, and in episode 3 is when we talked with Sarah Waldman from Communication Disorders and how she works with kids and more of the younger generation in trying to understand siblings and best ways to communicate. And I didn't know all of the creative ways that she applies with her SIPs in the SIP sub. So photography, comic books, they do work in the community garden. They do planting. Yeah. They work with Legos recently. So that's something that if I wasn't familiar with herself as a person, I would have never guessed by just even thinking about communication disorders.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was a very inspiring conversation because I mean, she was doing such great work in a very dynamic way with kids, right? Mm-hmm. That are dealing with challenges in their life, and how do we cope with that? And so it's learning, but learning as well as building a way of I don't want to say coping because it's not that kind of a challenge necessarily. I mean, in some ways it is, but it's just like how do we live in a way that's going to be supportive and true to our family and what our own needs are. Yes. Right. And I think that was really inspiring, and it kind of sparked in me kind of a hope or a desire to do more of that myself, right?
Same. Yeah. And she did talk about something that I just love too much, and I'm taking it everywhere I go. And it's just reminding ourselves that we are like a plant, and we maybe are not getting the correct light, and maybe we're not getting the correct soil, and we just have to put ourselves in a different pot.
Yeah.
And just thinking about that and just recentering ourselves when we have a little bit of doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then episode 4, we talked with Mike Skinner. And Mike's always great to talk with. And his approach towards, theater and just knowing, it was such an interesting overlap to see that he's like very much into radio drama and that sort of stuff. And, I'm hoping that at some point we'll be able to do something in direct connection to that, so we can get him in and we can maybe do some.
As I was preparing for today's episode, I kept thinking, I wonder if he already recorded that 2-person radio drama that he was talking about and where we can listen to it.
Yeah. We're going to definitely have to follow up and put that in some show notes. By the way, we are still in. This is for everyone that cares about this. But we are in the process of putting together a website. It's not ready to go yet, but we're trying to, pull together a basic website that would be an alternative way for you to access the website, but also provide some additional notes and things about what our guests are doing, what we're up to, those kinds of things. So we'll keep you posted on that as soon as it goes live, and hopefully that'll happen, within the next couple of episodes.
I am very excited for all of our upcoming promotional activities.
Yes, me too. Me too.
And then we had our last episode with the guest, which was right before the holiday break, and that was with Maria Kroll from nursing. And she talked a little bit about her experience in the military and then going into nursing. And even though she knew from a younger age that she was going to go into nursing, it didn't really happen until later in life. Right. And now she manages an amazing, amazing program that works with a lot of virtual reality. And I'm so impressed by all the technological innovations that they're applying into the courses.
Yeah, that blew me away, actually. I really do want to, talk with them, with her and the program more, because I'm really interested in the ways that they're doing that. Because I hadn't really thought about the way that we can do that sort of virtual reality kind of connection. I mean, I kind of, it was always in the background because, of course, the game connection and all that kind of stuff. I'm always thinking about that. But just thinking about, sort of simulating experiences and how that is progressing at a level that is making it much more doable. It's much more affordable now. And potentially has overcome some of the issues that we have with putting students in live situations, right? Yeah. You can't always. All right, so just as an example, that's sort of low stakes because, when we're talking about nursing, they're talking about dealing with patients and things, and that puts them in sort of a safe space to make mistakes and that kind of thing. But the other side of it is, if people are doing a public presentation in a communication-related class, there aren't necessarily a lot of stakes versus, apart from embarrassment, right? But it's sometimes really difficult to pull together an audience, right? We can, if we have a classroom full of students, it's easy to pull folks in that way because you've got other students, and but they're not always to the point where they can create or give good feedback and that kind of thing. So if you try to pull folks in from the outside, you have lots of schedules to, and people aren't necessarily coming together to do that unless it's like some sort of big public performance and that kind of stuff. And we don't have that all the time, especially for students that are learners. Yeah. So doing some sort of VR thing makes that possible.
Yeah, no, it was so impressive, but it also inspired me into learning more about the different types of technologies that we can bring to our classrooms and to our students as well, that maybe are a little bit more economical because we may not have the budget for that. But I also learned over the winter break, and I learned this through a colleague of ours, that ChatGPT now has phone calls. So you can call into ChatGPT and you can role play. So already with my capstone, with my senior students, I'm discussing how they're going to be doing their pitches or how they're going to be practicing for their interviews, and how we can call ChatGPT and tell it, you're going to role play as somebody that is going to interview me for a graphic design position, entry level, and I'm going to practice my soft skills with you. So I want you to give me feedback or maybe make it a little bit more challenging to see how I respond to these situations. And
That's
I find
great.
it so amazing. And I talked about it in class on Friday. I cannot wait for the students to start applying it. And if somebody's going to pass by my classroom and see everyone on their phones, they're probably going to be a little weirded out. Like, what is Melanie teaching? But just little things like that, taking the technology that we have available to us and leveraging it in ways that is going to benefit our students and our communities.
I definitely want to talk to you more about that, because I do pitches in my basic design class, and just having some sort of feedback with that would be just it would take it to a very different level for the students.
And sure. I have a notepad too, and it's so difficult sitting back here because I never know when to jump in.
Oh. You can jump in whenever you want, Jay.
I try to find that
welcome.
Natural sort of like stopping point, but I think, Chat GPT is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The toothpaste is out of the tube. So I think, Melanie, what you're doing is a great thing in the sense that you're essentially, there's a few things going on. Number one, how are we using the technology, the software that students are using already? And we know that they're using it, right? We're not naive to that. So we're using it to our benefit, but we're also telling the students, like, it's okay in some context to use this.
Right.
Right? It's to me, Chat GPT is kind of like Wikipedia. When Wikipedia first rolled out, we were kind of like, oh, this, if anybody can edit this, how can we possibly deem it credible? Right? But if we use Wikipedia in the sense that I just want to learn quickly about a particular topic, it does its job. But it's really up to the user, the intention of the user to further that research, to check, said sources and information and so on. But
definitely,
if we're just using it and our intention to use it is for a specific reason, but we're going to push that forward, I think it's a good thing. So the context in which you are introducing something like Chat GPT that we've had these conversations. It's, people are looking at it, and yes, in terms of, writing a term paper or something, we probably should not use that, especially, from the student's perspective. But when we're incorporating it in class and saying, no, we're using it, we're intending to use it in terms of role playing. This is a really good use of Chat GPT.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the what we're trying to do, and actively across our programs is trying to figure out, like, well, what is the best use of this? How do we use this in a productive way? Let's look at it as a tool that's going to be something that forwards what we're trying to do and doesn't become a detriment. And with any new technology, it's always here's the limitations, or here's how it's going to ruin everything, right? Yeah. And that goes back to the ancient Greeks, right? Was it Plato, I think, that didn't like writing because it ruined people's memories? Was that right? I
don't know.
But
that is correct, by the
way. I think that's part of our challenge as educators, is to kind of figure out, like, how do these things work, and hopefully that's something that we can talk about more as we have.
I was just going to say that.
So we're going to have to end the podcast. We've run short on time. We thank you all for tuning in, and what I'd like to do is just still invite you to give us suggestions and thoughts about what we can do in future episodes at creativejpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks,
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. podcast produced at Southern Connecticut State University by faculty, students, and staff who are interested in exploring our creative potential.